welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. And if you are new, what's up? My name is Dakota. I do a ton of content on this channel. It's very diverse. I do story times, I do true crime, advice, lifestyle, things like that. And today is going to be my first video where I am telling some of the spookiest Reddit stories on the internet. If you guys didn't know, I am such a I am obsessed with anything paranormal, anything spooky, anything bone chilling. Not horror stories, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, no. Definitely not. Immediately no. I love Haley Reese, Lois Lane, why is there so much fucking fuzz? Could you go away? But like that. So I am just obsessed with Reddit stories. I go on the internet all the time and I look them up, and a lot of you guys are actually requesting, because I tell stories so well, that I do some Reddit story times. And I found 11 of the scariest ghost stories from Reddit, and it says leave the lights on when you read these bone-chilling stories of average people encountering the paranormal. I'm not even gonna lie, I have so many lights on in here that I'm not that scared, but you guys may be, so you might want to get a drink, a snack, or definitely not a notepad. Sorry, that's my advice content coming out. Get a warm cup of tea or something and join me tonight as we read some of the scariest Reddit stories on the internet. Before we get started, don't forget to give this video a like. Don't forget to subscribe. Turn your post notifications on, and click the bell icon in the corner. That way you can see more of my face on YouTube, period. And if you guys like me doing stuff like this, then just let me know. I have not read these stories yet, so we're gonna be reading them together. So let's get started. The first one says, I wasn't a little girl. Oh shit. I was camping with my husband and his family at a small remote lake in New Mexico. They were about 10 in our group and another people of 6 in the next campsite. It was nighttime and both groups were doing typical activities, making s'mores, having drinks, and telling stories, when we all heard what sounded like a little girl yelling out for help. Neither group had children with them, but we were all positive that we were all hearing a little girl, and decided to search the area where we heard the noises together. There was a field behind our campsites, and we all saw a very tall, pure white figure standing maybe 100 feet away from us in the field, making noises. We all agreed this thing looked maybe 6 feet tall, skinny, and white as can be. We made our way closer to investigate, but whatever it was that we saw started backing off as we got closer. It disappeared into the trees. All night we continued to hear a little girl calling for help as we tried to sleep. What the fuck? That is so scary. And honestly, I have heard so many stories of people saying that they see these super tall figures and stuff within their houses, or when they're passing a corner. And that is literally just no, oh my god, I'm getting chills right now. I never get chills with ghost stories. What the fuck? The premium spot on the internet for hearing total strangers' most insane stories has to be the Reddit forum Ask Reddit. In the case of these 13 threads you're about to read, the conversation centered around spooky, scary, creepy, and unexplainable events that happen to Redditors in real life. From terrifying tales of outdoor explorations gone wrong to the tingling sensations some might get when they suspect the spirits, ghouls, or ghosts inhabits one home, the moments in time that invade explanation. These threads are incredibly binge-worthy. Just keep in mind, you will not be able to sleep after reading some of these. Sorry, y'all. I am really sorry. Alright, so the first one says, law enforcement of Reddit, have you ever had a paranormal case? Oh, Lord. My brother was a deputy. At the time, I worked as an EMT for a few small towns in northeast Colorado. I frequently went on rides along with him while waiting for 911 calls to come in. This took place in Amherst, Colorado. The town is very small. Amherst has about 50 people, a church, some houses, a grain tower, and a park. It was about 3 a.m. We were about to call it a night. As we were making our last check on Amherst, we noticed movement at the park, but couldn't tell what it was going on because it was pitch black. We drove up and stopped alongside the dirt road, flipped on a spotlight, and we moved the light around the park. It finally settled on the back of a young girl, maybe 12, maybe 13, sitting on a swing with her back facing us. Oh my god, I just got fucking chills. There's no way. Immediately no. Immediately no. We left the spotlight on her. She wasn't moving. She just sat there facing away from us, looking down at the ground. Needless to say, it was a very creepy situation. We quickly suggested that we should call her over using the PA system. He agreed. As we looked back at her, she was gone. No signs of her anywhere. The park was in a wide open area, so she could not have gotten out of sight in the amount of time that we had our exchange of words. I remember saying, should we go out and look for her? Maybe she hid behind one of the park toys or something. My brother looked at me, said hell no, and drove away. It creeps me out to this day. And then somebody commented and said, I'm from Colorado. I have grown up hearing stories like this about Amherst and some other areas. Creepy ass story. Okay, this one is to all of my Reddit travelers. What is the creepiest hotel story you have? My mom was traveling for work and sat next to a man on the plane. They had casual conversation and exchanged business cards. Later that evening, she's in her hotel watching TV and gets a phone call from the desk that her husband is here and they want to know if they can give him the key to the room. Turns out the creep on the plane was pretending to be her husband to try to get into her room. Oh, hell no. 911 dispatcher reporting in. Received a call from an elderly lady who had trouble breathing. I had taken several calls from her and her husband in the past, so I recognized her voice. I dispatched an ambulance to her residence and held her on the line trying to keep her calm while the ambulance was responding. Ambulance advised that they had a 15-minute estimated time amount. She lived in a very rural part of West Virginia. I'm talking to her, asking about her husband and how he was doing, making small talk. The ambulance calls in and advises they are on the scene. I let them know that she is in a very severe respiratory distress, and I still had her on the line. I let her know the ambulance is coming to the door to answer, and she says okay and hangs up the phone. Pretty normal, yeah, but here's where it gets weird. The EMT and paramedic on scene called back a minute later advising that no one's answering the door. We have a sheriff unit who was in the area pulling on scene about that time. He confirmed the address and advised he is breaching the door to make access to the patient. Minutes go by, the paramedic on scene radios in asking who the caller was. I advise it was the elderly female who lived at the residence. He tells me that he's going to call in and needs to speak with the supervisor on shift. We get him over to the supervisor. The supervisor confirms the information that I gave him and asks what's going on. Apparently, the elderly female had been dead for a very long time and was already in full rigor mortis. They thought I was wrong on the caller, but the other dispatchers played it back and confirmed that it was the female who called. The ambulance transferred to the hospital. We got the same calls and disbeliefs from doctors. So basically, I took a call from a ghost. What? In the spirit of Halloween, paranormal or not, what is the scariest, creepiest, or most unsettling thing that happened to you? My parents had just had their first child, my oldest sister, Kathy. They'd been living in Italy at the time. My dad was in the Air Force. And I brought her back to the US to introduce her to the grandparents at the time. The first night there, my mom was asleep in the front bedroom, jet-lagged. My dad had gone to hang out with his brothers. In the middle of the night, this woman walks into my mom's room, waking her up. She sits down on the bed and says, "Shh, it's okay. I just wanted to welcome you to the family." My mom was scared, obviously, but figured this was some relative or family friend or something that came over. The woman walks over to the bassinet where my baby sister was sleeping. "Is this your daughter?" My mom nodded. "She's beautiful. It's lovely to meet you both." And then she leaves. My mom wakes up the next day and is having breakfast with my grandmother. She brought it up to her. "Who was that woman that came over last night?" My grandmother had no idea what she was talking about. My mom told her the whole story about how she was sleeping, a woman had come in and wanted to welcome her to the family. My mom explained that she just thought that maybe it was someone who came over and just wasn't over before when she was awake. My grandmother asked what she looked like. My mom said tall, long white hair, wearing a blue dress. My grandmother's face went pale as a sheet. She rummaged through some of the old pictures and pulled one out. "Is this her?" My mom nodded. "That's my mother. She's been dead for 20 years and we buried her in a blue dress." What the fuck? That just gave me chills. Okay, this is kind of a long one. This is the story of how a creepy encounter with the scary man at Harbor Cafe saved me from something even more terrifying. It was autumn of '94 and I was 19 years old. At the time, my dad had been working for almost 6 years abroad and I was planning a surprise visit. My dad and I have always been very close. I am an only child and my mother died of cancer when I was still a baby. It was just my dad and I, really, a tiny little family, but he made up for it by being the most awesome parent ever. Now that I wasn't a little kid anymore, I appreciated that more and more. I had booked the ticket and was ready to go. It was going to be a great fun to surprise him with a visit. I had to take the ferry though, and I had just gotten my driver's license and felt really unhappy about having to drive my little car on board to the ferry. I decided to not bring my car at all and just rent one once I got there. Having time to spend, I decided to have coffee at a nearby cafe since I was early and they hadn't started letting people on the ferry just yet. At the cafe, there was lots of truck drivers and I soon realized I was the only woman there. One man, a 40-ish bloke with ice blue eyes and tattoos all over, was eyeing me from across the room. Something about him made my skin crawl. I got up to leave, feeling suddenly very uncomfortable, and to utter horror, he followed. What do I do now, I asked myself. This was before everyone owned a cell phone. I might add, I decided to try and look busy. Maybe he would leave me alone. So I pulled out my ticket and tried to look like I was reading it carefully, when he suddenly snatched it from my hand and said, I'm on the same boat. I'll have hours of your company then. How lovely. Oh, hell no. In a voice that was an absurd combination of flattery and hidden hostility. I felt it very strongly that if I got on the boat with this man who knew my booking details, I'd be in great danger. I can't explain why the feeling was overwhelming, but it was. I decided there and then to not get on the boat. The ticket had been cheap anyway. I could get on the next one. Instead, I hid in the ladies' room until I knew the ferry had left and went to rebook my ticket. The story could have ended there, but it doesn't. I was right in the assumption that getting on the ferry would have been unbelievably dangerous. The date was September 28th, 1994. The name of the ship was MS Estonia, and that cold night she sank in the Baltic Sea, taking 852 people with her, resulting in the worst ferry catastrophe to strike Sweden to this day. I still recall that day with horror. I wonder what would have happened if this creepy man had not taken an interest in me, if I had not listened to my instinct and intuition and gotten on board instead of waiting for the next boat. Would I have been among the survivors, or would have my dad seen my name on the lost lives of the Baltic Sea? That is absolutely crazy. And somebody commented and said, that's scary, like the people who had bad feelings or ended up not boarding planes from 9/11. Glad you're okay. Like literally, like I just got chills. Like there was this one story about this guy who he was late to work because he had to go get a band-aid on the day of 9/11, and so he wasn't in the building when it collapsed. But he would have been there had he not. Oh my god, I literally have chills right now. If he would have not stopped for that band-aid. So it's just crazy to me how like our intuition really does tell us to not do things sometimes in order to prevent us from having really any harm, you know? All right, this last thread is, what is something that's happened to you that you cannot explain rationally? I used to work doing maintenance at a historic property. There was a historic house museum I worked at when I wasn't open to the public. It was a part of a whole landmark site. There was a visitor center with offices, and then the house was about half a mile up the dirt road in a wooded area. Sometimes I worked with the crew, but there were a lot of times I was there just alone. One winter day when it was really cloudy and dark, I was working alone to get ready to replace some electrical work on the exterior of the house. I went inside and turned off the circuit to the whole property, and I tested it. It was completely off, no questions asked. I locked the doors and went outside to work. After an hour, I got down from my ladder and started walking around the house, and one of the lights inside the house was turned on. I started to completely freak out, but thought maybe there was someone playing a joke on me. I called the visitor center on my walkie-talkie and confirmed that the only other person who was working that day was still there and hadn't left, and that all the keys to the house were present and accounted for. None were taken and none were missing. That's when I freaked out and ran half a mile up to the office. I made my coworker come back with me to check out what was going on. But when we got to the house, the light was off. The bulb was still warm though. All the doors were still locked and the circuit was off. It still gives me shivers to this day. That is fucking crazy. My parents had been married for maybe a month. They were in bed sound asleep when all of a sudden my mom jumps up and wakes up my dad. Jimmy, there's blood everywhere. We have to help them, please. My dad tried his best to calm her down and was severely confused about what she was talking about. My mom had explained that she saw a car with a German license plate on the side of the road, that there had been an accident and they needed help. My dad tried to console her, to explain that it was all just a bad dream. But she wasn't having it. So to appease her, they got in the car and drove to the spot my mom thought the accident was. And sure enough, at the exact spot, my mom said there was a car on the side of the road, German plates and emergency flashers on. Upon investigation, there was nobody in the car. If they needed help, help had already come. That is weird. Oh, that just gave me chills. All right, last one. I was working at a hotel in Albuquerque, the graveyard shift. I'd been talking to the security guard and he asked if I could get a ride home. Instead of waiting for 30 minutes for my shift to end, I just left a note for my boss and said that I left early because my brother was stranded outside of town and needed help. Total lie on my part, but I needed a good excuse to leave early. I dropped off the security guard at his place, then go home and go to sleep. A couple hours of sleep and I wake up to my phone ringing. It was my brother. He tells me he's stranded outside of town and needs me to come get him. I told my brother the lie I told my boss and how much of a coincidence that it is that he's calling me. He says that's not weird. He'll show me that what's weird when I get there. I get there and ask him what's weird. He puts his phone up to my ear and plays a message that he got when he woke up that morning. It's a voice that kind of sounded computerized, but mostly just creepy sounding. It says, "You're stuck." Freaked us both out. Never figured out where the call came from. Strangest, creepiest thing that's ever happened in my life. Okay, I know I keep saying last one, but these are just getting so much better. So this is Urban Explorers of Reddit. What's your creepiest and most horrifying experience? Went to an abandoned hospital. There was a large square staircase spiraling up to the roof on the outside of the building. Locked steel door at the bottom. The only way was to climb on the outside to the first landing. My buddy boosts me up. I climb over, and there's a sleeping bag with a steak knife next to it on the landing. I call down. We're definitely not alone here, dude." "No, but it's cool," says a voice behind me, scaring the absolute shit out of me, causing me to jump and roll around. There's a young, dirty, homeless-looking guy standing there, coming the stairs up from above. He takes a seat on the stairs, so I carefully step on the handle of the steak knife, lean over the edge, and pull my friend up. We had planned to sit on the roof and drink beer. We offer the homeless guy a beer, which he gratefully accepts, and we shoot the shit on the landing for a while. We're talking about the city, the cops, traveling, life in general. He's basically a drifter, been in town for a week or so, but a nice guy. Things are going pretty well, but then he asks, "So you guys are humans, right?" I fucking hate it when I meet people that end up being aliens and never know until you peel their skin off. They've been after me a long time. They don't stop. He's definitely not joking. There's an uncomfortable silence as my friend and I realize this guy's fucking crazy. "Yeah, man, we're humans. We just wanted to check out the place and drink some beer. We're gonna go ahead now and move on. We definitely don't want any trouble." He just stares in silence, leave from the last beer, carefully back up to the railing, jump down and walk away. Very quickly, constantly looking back over our shoulders the entire time. He's just standing there, still and silent, watching us leave. That place is still abandoned. 5 years later, we've never been back. I'm not a believer in supernatural, but humans can be deceptive and dangerous in ways you can't see coming. Yeah, that one definitely made my heart jump out of my chest because the whole, like, what? I can't. That is it for today's Reddit stories, you guys. This definitely was supposed to be like all paranormal, but then I didn't like the ones that I was reading, so I kind of switched it up. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did like me reading Reddit story times, it's a little bit different from me telling my personal story times, but telling stories nonetheless. Let me know if you liked it down below. Also, let me know where I could find like super creepy like paragraphs, novels of Reddit stories, because that would be super cool for me to do too. Don't forget to subscribe and turn your post notifications on by clicking the bell icon in the corner. Don't forget to follow me on my personal development podcast, Sis Let's Heal. The link is always in my bio, or you can just type it into any streaming platform, Apple, Spotify, Google, things like that. I hope I didn't keep you guys up all night. I hope you could actually get some sleep, and I will see you guys in my next Reddit storytime video. Bye.
I guess that's what happens. Two fools be falling in love, mixing some pain and some passion. Nothing is ever enough.